Hello, and welcome back to the new session called Prompt Engineering. Prompt engineering is the process of structuring text that can be interpreted and understood by a generative AI model. Generative AI models produce output in response to your natural language queries, and getting the most relevant and useful output from the model is a skill that needs to be mastered by anyone working with these models. And this skill is something that we refer to as a prompt engineering. Let's understand what exactly prompt engineering is all about. Prompt engineering is primarily used in communication with a text to text model, a model that accepts natural language text as its input and produces natural language text in its response. Prompt engineering is enabled by the model's ability for in context learning. When you specify multiple instructions as a part of a prompt, the model is able to learn from these instructions and the back and forth conversations that you have with the model in order to produce the most relevant response. A prompt is something that is super straightforward. It's just natural language text describing the task that you want the model to perform. A prompt is just a question that you ask the model. Now you might wonder if you are just asking the model question what is engineering is all about. Well, fact of the matter is generative AI is still in the early stages of the development, which means that the models may not give you exactly the answer that you are looking for. Models are also prone to hallucinations or making up facts. Prompt engineering is the skills of structuring a prompt to get the most relevant, coherent, and meaningful response. Other kinds of models also work with prompts. For example, you may be generating an image using natural language text, or you may be using a text to audio model to produce audio from the text that you input. In these kinds of models, the prompt helps to define what exactly is the kind of output that you are looking for. A prompt can be any kind of question or query, and you're likely very familiar with prompt, but I will show you a few examples here. You might ask ChatGPT or Bard, please explain Einstein theory of relativity in simple terms, as though to a fifth grader. Or you might ask the model to generate code, write code in Python to compute the average of numbers in a list. Or you might be feeling creative and you ask the model to write a poem about how programming is fun, and the poem should be short and humorous. You can see from all of the different prompting examples that I have given here, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, as you might imagine that prompting can elicit a diverse range of responses from the model. The quality of the model's response can be controlled directly using your prompt. So let's talk about the importance of prompting. Why do we use prompting? We want to guide the model to generate relative input. By providing a specific prompt with all of the context and details embedded within that prompt, it's possible to get the model to generate output that is the most relevant and coherent in your context. Let's say you are using generative AI models to do some kind of research. You might find that with simple queries, you get the same kind of can responses. If you use prompt engineering techniques to query the model more deeply, you might find that you improve the quality and diversity of the output that the model generates. Now, an important thing to keep in mind is that the large language models to which you present your queries are trained on real datasets. Now, data in the real world tends to be biased. It tends to reflect the biases, the racism, and other issues that are present in a human speech and text. With the right prompt engineering techniques, you can increase the control over the model's responses, improve the interpretability of those responses, and even reduce bias. Another thing that you are likely encountered with generative AI is that it's prone to hallucinations. Models may hallucinate knowledge that is not fractal or it's totally incorrect. Prompting can guide the model in the right direction by making it cite the right references and give the right answers. You can also incorporate the goal or the objective that you are trying to achieve into the prompt itself, and thus allow the model to determine what's good outcomes and bad outcomes look like. And the model will seek to give you a good outcome in your response. And finally, the right kind of prompt improves the safety of the model and helps defend against prompt hacking, where users send prompts to produce undesirable behaviors from the model. Prompt engineering has many uses. You had, of course, used it in your normal everyday task when you are interacting with generative AI models, but prompt engineering can be used for more organization specific needs as well. For example, let's say you are an e commerce firm and you are helping tune your chatbot to respond to customer queries. Well, you might use prompt engineering there. Or maybe you are helping build some technology for a law firm. You might want to use prompt engineering with chatbot so that the law firm can use generative AI models to help lawyers generate contract specifications. Or you might have a technical support desk where you tune models to answer common queries so that the most common questions don't go to human support agents. So, what are some of the challenges that you might face when you are using prompts with these generative AI models? The first thing is, how do you get the required results on the first try? Ideally, you would like your prompt to be well structured and have all of the details and context embedded within it so that you get the required response from the model in one shot. Another challenge with prompt engineering is figuring out the right place to start. How exactly do you structure your prompt? Another challenge that you might face is mitigating bias in the output. We have discussed the fact that generative AI models may be biased in their responses, and you would like to make sure that you are mitigating this bias when you were generating responses from the model. Another challenge that you will encounter while working with prompt is how do you obtain diversity and creativity in the results. You want to make sure that your model is not giving you a narrow specific response when you are looking for more exploration and creativity. Another common challenge with generative AI model is interpretability. Ideally, you would want to structure your prompt in such a way that it's easy for you to understand the reasoning behind the response the model gives you. And finally, you would like your prompts to maintain balance between precision and creativity. You would like the model to give you fact based responses with a certain flair. The widespread use of generative AI models and the rise of prompting had led to the discovery of security vulnerabilities using these generative AI models via prompts. The first of these is prompt injection, where the attacker can manipulate the prompt to generate malicious or harmful output from the model. If you are using generative AI models within your organization, you have to be concerned about sensitive information that you might inadvertently expose through the output generated by the model. When training a generative AI model on your organization's data, you have to ensure that responses from the model don't leak sensitive information to the wrong people. Another security concern is jailbreaking, where an attacker could gain unauthorized access to the model's internal state and parameters, which means the model is now vulnerable and can be attacked and its responses can no longer be trusted. And one last security vulnerability to be aware of, models can perpetuate biases. They can generate unlawful and misleading information. Remember, the Gen AI model has no concept of right and wrong, even though sometimes it seems like it does. Let's discuss some prompt engineering techniques that you can follow while working with these models. The first and most important thing to remember is that subtitles and nuance matter in prompting. Every word that you specify in a prompt is important. Describe the Taj Mahal versus describe the history of the Taj Mahal will give you very different responses. When you type in a prompt in order to elicit a response, make sure that you are very clear and concise about what it is that you are using or asking for. The model behind a prompt is trained on large datasets and it uses cues from your input to give you answers. The more detailed, specific, and clear your prompt is, better the response from the model. It also helps to break down the prompt sometimes if you have a particularly complex ask. Let's look at the different components that make up a good prompt. Let's discuss the anatomy of a prompt. Every prompt comprises of instructions. This is the core directive of the prompt. It tells the model what you want the model to do. For example, summarize the following text provides a clear action for the model. Now, in your prompt, you can also specify context. Context provide additional information that helps the model understand the broader scenario or background. For example, you might say something like, I am 25 years old, just starting of my career. How do I invest the money that I have saved? The fact that you are 25 and you are just starting your career will make a big difference to how the model responds. You may also include input data as a part of your prompt. For example, if there is a specific information or data that you want the model to process or parse, you will specify that in your prompt. It could be a paragraph, a set of numbers, or even just a single word. You may also choose to specify an output format in which you want the results. This is especially useful if you are generating data. Maybe you want the data in the form of CSV file or a JSON file. There are other techniques that you can use to improve the performance of your prompts. One is role playing. By making the model act as a specific entity like a scientist or a math tutor, you can get teller responses. As you're eliciting responses from the model, start with a broad prompt and gradually refine it based on how the model responds. This iterative process helps in honing the prompt to perfection. Make sure that you are adding constraint and specifying constraint as a part of your prompt. Models often respond better to positive constraints. Please use Python as your programming language, do not use Java. Make sure that you are using the model's output to inform and adjust subsequent prompts that you use with the model. This dynamic interaction ensures the model's responses align more closely with your expectations. In addition to these basic techniques, there are some advanced techniques that you can use in prompting as well, such as zero-shot prompting. This technique involves providing the model with a task it hasn't seen during its training, and it tests the model's ability to generalize and produce relevant outputs without relying on prior examples. If you feel that you are not receiving good response with zero-shot prompting, you can use few-shot prompting or in-context learning. Here, you give the model a few examples or shots to guide its response. The model will be able to use the examples that you are given to generate better results while generating the desired output. Another technique that works well for complex tasks is chain of thought prompting. This involves guiding the model through a series of reasoning steps by breaking down a complex task into intermediate steps or chain of reasoning. The model can achieve better language understanding and more accurate outputs. Another possible technique you could use is augmented knowledge or generated knowledge prompting. This is where you provide the model with a knowledge base or script that the model can then use to respond to your queries.